surprises, don't you? They just reassure us that, go on, do this. I'm here, and I'm behind you, and you don't have to worry about it. And I love that story that we read together from 2 Chronicles, and we've been referring to this morning, of the dedication of Solomon's temple, which was, by all accounts, an amazing and a magnificent structure. And it's a fantastic story, again, of God providing for his people when they step out in faith and obedience to his will. The temple, which was built by King Solomon, was, of course, the fulfillment of King David's ambitions and plans. And Israel as a nation had spent many years in bondage to Pharaoh down in Egypt, and then since returning to the promised land from this time of slavery, they had been oppressed by just about everyone for centuries. The Philistines, the Midianites, you name them, they had terrorized the life out of Israel. And for years, these oppressive nations would invade Israel and exploit her. But eventually, David begins to gain military supremacy and success. And things begin to look up for Israel as she enters into what has become known as the golden era of her history. And David himself has been so hugely successful, he's now living in his own royal palace. Cedar paneling, gold leaf, you name it, it was in the palace. An incredibly beautiful place to live. And then one day it dawns on David, it's not right that I should be living in a house like this while the Lord is still living in a tent. A tent that was over 400 years, was battered and threadbare, moldy, I'm sure, used in the wilderness. So David declares his intentions to the prophet Nathan that I am going to build a house to the Lord. And he spends the closing years of his reign gathering together the wood and the gold and the silver and the tapestries and the marble and all the rest of it that will be needed for this masterpiece. But now David's dead. Solomon is on the throne, and it's his job to complete the work. And after 7.5 years, the construction is completed and the final touches are in place, and the temple is opened, as we read in 2 Chronicles 6 and 7. And everyone, including the priests, are on their knees in the presence of the Shekinah glory of God, on their faces before this ultimate reality of God's great and awesome presence. Obviously, the temple was somewhere of uttermost importance. Why? What's important about a temple? Well, I think there are two things. I think that the temple was the place where heaven and earth met, where heaven and earth intersected, where the temporal and the eternal came together. It was a place where the supernatural and the natural intersected with one another, a kind of cosmic crossroads, if you like. And that's what it stood for. But also it was a place where the divine resided. God lived there. He came down in fire and smoke and filled the place with his presence and his power, so that this physical space was full of spiritual reality. The place where the threshold which stood between humanity and God was crossed. The place where somehow or other the great gulf between ultimate transcendent mystery and humankind was bridged. That's what the temple was before Jesus came. Then Jesus comes along. He's born. And he comes to the temple in John's Gospel, chapter 2, a story that you all know so well, referred to as the cleansing of the temple in so many respects. And you remember that day when Jesus comes into the temple precincts and he finds sellers and merchants and all the rest of it going on, and sheep and goats are being sold and money is being exchanged, and he overturns the tables and he tells the traders to get out. What's going on there? And then he stands up and he makes an incredible claim for himself. He says, "Destroy this temple and I will raise it again in 3 days." And people are astonished and astounded. What does he mean? How can this possibly be? There's confusion. How can he build something in 3 days that took over 46 years to complete? What in the world is he talking about? But the temple he had spoken of was his body. And what Jesus is saying in essence is that I am the temple. Heaven and earth meet in me. I am both temporal and eternal. I am both of this world and the world to come. I am both natural and supernatural. I am the temple. I am ultimate reality. And when you meet me, you meet the Father as well. And when you meet me, you see the Shekinah glory of God. And as Jesus was hung on a cross and bridged that gap between earth and heaven, between God and you, he died as a sacrifice for the sins of the world. And he can say to us, I've bridged that gap. I've made it possible for you to cross that threshold, to come to God and to know him and to have his blessing in your life. And we in West Church, as a congregation together, we long to have a connection with the community in which we're situated. That's our vision, isn't it? To reach out beyond our walls and our railings and to reach into the community around about us and in the far-flung districts and towns and villages. We're not building a new hall simply for the sake of having a new hall, but to have a new hall that furthers our vision, that brings people over the threshold into the place where they can make that most wonderful, amazing connection of all as they meet with God, as they are touched with the love and the grace and the kindness of Jesus. And a new hall is simply a tool to this great and glorious end of furthering gospel ministry in this place and building on the heritage of our forefathers. You know that it's true that many in our day don't really think they have any need of a temple of God in their lives anymore. They have temples to science in their laboratories. They have temples to money in their banking institutions. They have temples to health in their leisure facilities and their welfare systems. But then for many in our community, there is no ultimate, no divine mystery. But we want to provide a place where people can cross our threshold and come and encounter the sheer beauty and brilliance, the majesty and the mystery of the divine, the ultimate. And more as we go out into our communities, more and more we're finding that people are beginning to come to their senses in this respect. That people are searching for spiritual reality in a way they've never done before. And we want to meet that search and provide that place where people can cross our threshold and meet with the presence of God. Our forefathers, as Morris has reminded us, have left us a treasured legacy in this lovely building, this place where we gather for worship Sunday by Sunday and in other important family days, both happy days and sad days. And our forefathers did us proud, did they not? Well, of course they did. And we want to honor them, and we want to honor generations yet unborn as we commit ourselves to this great task, which is our great commission, to go out into the world with the good news of the gospel of Jesus Christ. And today, as you came into church, you should have received one of these little laminated cards, which I would like you to take home with you and to use. We used it on Sunday the 6th of January, which was our 150th anniversary Sunday. Remember the day that the moderator visited us? And let's rekindle our passion. And let us set our sails to do what God is calling us to do for the glory of his name. Let us pray together. God our Father, you have not changed over the passing generations. You are the same God today as you were in King David and King Solomon's time. You're the same God who was calling our forefathers to build this building and to constitute this congregation. You are the same God who gave generosity into the hearts of those following the ravages of a potato famine and hard times to put their hands in their pockets and to give generously to the work of your kingdom. And today, in economically challenging times, you continue to call us to be generous to the work of furthering your kingdom, of providing a place where men and women and young people can cross a threshold into an encounter with the living God through his Son, Jesus Christ.